The court noted several instances when different federal entities communicated with and even pressured social media companies to suppress content. However, no one brought evidence that these agencies were specifically targeting the plaintiffs. From the White House in early 2021 and continuing primarily through that year, the Director of Digital Strategy and members of the COVID-19 response team interacted with the platforms about their efforts to suppress vaccine misinformation. They expressed concern that Facebook, in particular, was one of the top drivers of vaccine hesitancy. Publicly, White House communications officials called on the platforms to do more to address COVID-19 misinformation and perhaps as motivation, raise the possibility of reforms aimed at the platforms, including changes to the antitrust laws and 47 U.S.C. Section 230. Even the evidence that the White House had pressured Facebook about not taking down a post wasn't sufficient to prove standing because it could not be linked to a post from one of the plaintiffs. How about the Surgeon General? In July 2021, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy issued a health advisory on misinformation. The advisory encouraged platforms to redesign recommendation algorithms to avoid amplifying misinformation, impose clear consequences for accounts that repeatedly violate platform policies, and provide information from trusted and credible sources to prevent misconceptions from taking hold. At a press conference to announce the advisory, Surgeon General Murthy argued that the platform should operate with greater transparency and accountability. The following year, the Surgeon General issued a request for information seeking, among other things, reports on each platform's COVID-19 misinformation policies. The Surgeon General not only issued a health advisory on misinformation, encouraging platforms to redesign their algorithms to not only suppress such content, but to punish those who repeatedly posted such information. Like the White House, the CDC frequently communicated with platforms about COVID-19 misinformation. In early 2020, Facebook reached out to the agency seeking authoritative information about the virus that it could post on the platform. The following year, the CDC's communications expanded to other platforms, including Twitter and YouTube. The CDC hosted meetings and sent reports to the platforms alerting them to misinformation trends and flagging example posts. The platforms often asked the agency for fact checks on specific claims. Facebook reached out to the CDC for authoritative information. That's one thing. But when the CDC flagged what they considered misinformation with the clear intent that it be suppressed, that is interference with freedom of the press. Then we got the FBI and CISA. These agencies communicated with the platforms about election-related misinformation. They hosted meetings with several platforms in advance of the 2020 presidential election and the 2022 midterms. The FBI alerted the platforms to posts containing false information about voting, as well as pernicious foreign influence campaigns that might spread on their sites. Shortly before the 2020 election, the FBI warned the platforms about the potential for a Russian hack and leak operation. Some companies updated their moderation policies to prohibit users from posting hacked materials. Until mid-2022, CISA, through its switchboarding operations, forwarded third-party reports to election-related misinformation to platforms. These communications typically stated that the agency would not take any action, favorable or unfavorable, towards social media companies based on decisions about how or whether to use this information. While the CISA stated that they would not take any action, favorable or unfavorable, towards social media companies for their actions, could that be said of the FBI? And after all, by claiming information was false that later turned out to be true, the FBI interfered with elections. However, even with all these examples, the court claimed that the plaintiffs didn't have standing because they could not show a direct causal link between the unconstitutional actions of federal agencies and the suppression of their data. In other words, the federal government could violate the First Amendment as long as they didn't name someone who could actually bring a case against them. That way, according to the court, no one could have standing to sue.